Okay, let's unpack this enduring phenomenon. Les Misérables, the book, the musical, the films. It's a story that just refuses to fade, right?
It really is. And the musical. Wow.
Yeah, its continuous reign on the West End and Broadway is
Yeah,
just incredible, real testament to its power.
absolutely.
So, for this deep dive, we're plunging into the historical and cultural context that really fuels this masterpiece.
And it's all thanks to you, our listener.
Exactly. You sent in such a rich collection of sources.
Yeah.
An interview with the brilliant minds behind the musical, Alain Boublil and Claude Michel Schoenberg.
Lively Reddit discussions dissecting the book's modern relevance and historical nuts and bolts.
And some really insightful academic perspectives, too. We know you're after knowledge that's both quick to grasp and deeply satisfying without, feeling overwhelmed.
And that's precisely what we're aiming for today.
Yeah, extracting the most compelling insights about the creation, the buzz around it, and the historical world of Les Miserables from everything you shared. Our mission, basically.
What's immediately striking, I think, is the variety of lenses. We have the creators reflecting on their own adaptation choices,
Right.
passionate online communities debating its lasting impact and accuracy,
Mm-hmm.
and then scholarly analysis offering that more academic understanding. It's a fascinating convergence.
Absolutely. Let's start with Boublil and Schoenberg. In that really insightful 2017 interview at the University of Virginia, they talked about their fundamental approach to Victor Hugo's huge novel.
Yeah. What was the core?
Well, they really emphasized their core intention to remain faithful to the very essence and the central message Hugo laid down.
That commitment is so significant, isn't it? To
Oh,
take a novel of that scale, that complexity, and reimagine it for the stage. It's a huge undertaking.
definitely.
And their dedication to Hugo's original spirit is, well, undeniably a key reason for the musical's lasting impact.
And it's so interesting how they see the musical as carrying forward the book's inherent relevance.
Yeah.
They specifically pointed to the problem of the woman,
No.
noting how even in contemporary protests, women often form the majority. This, they feel, reflects a persistent theme right from Hugo's work.
That really highlights Hugo's surprisingly modern lens on societal inequalities, doesn't it? A core insight the musical aims to preserve.
Exactly. It underscores the timeless nature of certain social struggles that Hugo brought right to the forefront.
Yeah, the fight for equality, the particular challenges women face. They aren't just relics of the 19th century. They're still very much with us,
They also delved into the origins of Miss Saigon,
right?
which they initially envisioned as like a modern spin on Madame Butterfly, a tragic love story set in our times.
Okay.
They even considered Grenada as a location initially.
Really? Grenada?
Yeah, before the Vietnam War became the backdrop, which raises that question about adapting narratives, doesn't it?
It does. How contexts shift. The fundamental themes, love, sacrifice, betrayal, they can resonate across totally different settings.
But that shift in focus from Miss Saigon towards the Vietnam War, it highlights that delicate balance, personal stories versus big historical events.
Hmm. A key challenge for creators adapting existing works. It shows how the weight of historical context can sometimes, well, unexpectedly steer the story.
And as many will recall, Miss Saigon did face its share of controversy.
Oh, definitely. Especially concerning casting.
Right, and that shift in focus towards the war itself, which arguably overshadowed the central love story, they mentioned their current production is intentionally aiming to bring that core human drama back to the forefront,
Which makes sense. It's a constant process of refinement, isn't it? Reevaluating how the story's being told.
ensuring the intended emotional core remains clear.
Yeah, their desire to recenter the individual relationships speaks volumes about their storytelling priorities.
Okay, shifting focus a bit to the broader landscape of musical theater. They had some really interesting observations on its evolution,
Like what?
particularly recognizing the seismic impact of Hamilton.
Yeah, yes, Hamilton.
And noting how Lin-Manuel Miranda himself has acknowledged their influence, that sort of lineage, that cross-pollination of ideas, it's vital for any art form to keep evolving, keep feeling fresh.
Totally. Hamilton's fusion of hip-hop with traditional musical theater structure clearly built on innovations from earlier works.
They also shared thoughts on contemporary musicals like Dear Evan Hansen,
Okay.
praising its sophisticated handling of complex themes, but noting how it's perhaps more understated music effectively serves that narrative.
Right. They really emphasize that the tradition of musical theater is one of constant boundary pushing, finding new ways to tell stories with music.
They did express a sentiment that some of these newer musicals, while undoubtedly interesting tackling important subjects,
Yeah.
they might not achieve that long-term classic status, not in the same vein as something like Jesus Christ Superstar or Evita.
Interesting. Why not?
They wondered if some might lack that enduring musical quality, the kind that lets a show connect across generations.
That's a fascinating point, the distinction between immediate impact and lasting legacy.
Exactly. Time, ultimately, will be the judge, won't it?
It always is.
They also gave us a glimpse into a future project, a revised opera version of their musical Martin Guerre.
Oh, Martin Guerre. It had successful tours, but never quite made it to Broadway, right?
That's the one. Sounds like they're eager to revisit it, maybe give it a new life in a different form.
That showcases their continued artistic drive, doesn't it? Always exploring new avenues.
And just to offer a little more personal insight, they shared some favorite foods.
Oh, you need help?
Hungarian goulash, apple strudel, matzo ball soup, sophisticated pasta, couscous. A real mix.
Nice. And vacation spots?
Egypt and Italy, both steeped in history and culture. It's always nice to glimpse those personal influences.
Sure is.
One last fascinating tidbit. Their alternative careers, if not the arts.
Go on.
One might have been a pilot, the other creating concepts in advertising.
Wow, talk about different trajectories.
Right.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's delve into the historical accuracy of Les Misérables. The Reddit discussions around this were certainly lively.
Yes, and it's crucial we pinpoint the specific historical period, because while the immense shadow of the 1789 French Revolution looms large.
Everyone thinks it's that revolution.
Exactly. But the primary events within Les Misérables actually unfold in 1832, during the June Rebellion.
Which was a distinct and ultimately less successful uprising.
Precisely. That's a key clarification that emerged in the Reddit threads.
People also mentioned the Bourbon Restoration, 1814, 1815, the return of the monarchy after Napoleon, then the Orleanist monarchy starting in 1830, and the subsequent 1848 revolution, that whole turbulent period.
And Victor Hugo himself navigated this shifting landscape. He was initially an Orleanist senator.
Right, before opposing Napoleon III later on.
All this political instability really set the stage for the social unrest in the book.
This wider political backdrop is absolutely essential for grasping the characters' motivations, their grievances, definitely. The pervasive social and political unrest of 19th century France provides the very foundation for their individual stories.
The book itself is peppered with really specific historical references, like the Battle of Waterloo.
Which actually sparked some debate on Reddit about whether they're, directly relevant to the main plot.
Yeah, I saw that. And there's that early mention of a red hat or red cap.
Yes. Very likely a direct nod to the iconic Phrygian cap of the French Revolution.
These historical details, even if they sometimes feel a bit tangential, they really contribute to the novel's incredibly rich texture. Anchors the fiction in reality.
Hugo was clearly meticulous. And it's also fascinating that Hugo himself was actually present during the June days of 1832.
He was there. Wow.
Yeah. That firsthand experience undoubtedly infused his depiction of the uprising with, well, a profound sense of immediacy and authenticity. He wasn't just recounting history, he was an eyewitness.
For anyone wanting to explore this period more, one Redditor highly recommended Mike Duncan's Revolutions podcast.
Oh yeah, Duncan's great.
Specifically, the season on the French Revolution and the episode on the June Rebellion. Sounds like a fantastic resource.
Definitely worth checking out.
Okay, now let's shift focus to how Les Misérables is perceived today. That Reddit discussion on whether it would be considered a good book if released now, it brought up some really interesting contrasting views.
This is where we really see that clash, don't we? Historical context versus modern literary tastes.
Totally. Some Redditors passionately praised Hugo's profound themes, the depth, the scope.
While others were more critical, pointing to the lengthy prose, those extensive historical and philosophical digressions.
Yeah.
They can feel a bit dense to a modern reader.
Exactly. There was a prevailing sentiment that, 19th century literature was maybe written for a different audience.
An audience with more leisure time, perhaps. Different expectations about pacing.
Yeah, the comparison to modern epic fantasy novels came up.
Right. They can also be incredibly long.
But the argument was that contemporary readers and editors generally prefer a tighter dramatic arc. Less patience for long tangents that don't directly push the plot forward.
One particularly insightful comment suggested that the beloved musical adaptation,
which is a masterpiece in its own right.
absolutely, but it can inadvertently make the original book feel somewhat turgid to modern readers.
Because the musical is so plot-driven.
Exactly. Whereas the book is described more as a profound meditation on life and redemption,
Yep.
allowing for those bigger explorations. That's a key distinction.
The two formats inherently prioritize different things.
It was also astutely pointed out that Les Misérables firmly belongs within French Romanticism and early realism.
Literary traditions that emphasized emotion, individual experience, depicting societal realities.
All central to Hugo's work. It really should be appreciated within that context rather than just judged by today's literary standards.
Understanding the historical and literary context is crucial for appreciating any classic, really.
It allows us to better understand the author's intentions, the conventions of their time, the original audience's expectations.
The impact of translation also came up.
Always a factor.
Some suggesting the original French offers a richer experience, which makes sense, and noting the varying quality of English translations and abridged versions.
Which can significantly alter how you encounter the text. Nuances get lost.
Definitely. But despite all these points about style and length, there was a strong underlying consensus, wasn't there?
Yeah, the book offers a profoundly moving look at the miserable class, those living in poverty, facing injustice.
And that its enduring themes, social inequality, the struggle for dignity, redemption, they still resonate with significant power today.
Ultimately, it's the sheer power of those fundamental human themes that lets the story transcend time and culture. The universal struggles for dignity, justice, hope, they speak to readers regardless of the era.
And connecting back to the creator's intentions, that powerful line from the musical, "At the end of the day, there's another day dawning." It really encapsulates that spirit of the Romantic era's storm and stress movement, doesn't it? That tension between oppression and yearning.
That constant yearning for both large-scale social change and, well, a deeply personal escape from hardship. Finding solace even in nature, like waves crashing.
That interplay between individual struggle and larger societal forces is absolutely central to Romanticism and realism, and Les Misérables just masterfully captures that enduring tension.
Finally, we touched briefly on the Reddit discussion about character growth, musical versus book.
Right, and the allegorical nature of some characters in the book, the parallels between Jean Valjean and Christ, for instance.
Hugo frequently imbued his characters with that kind of symbolic weight, using them as vehicles for larger philosophical and moral concepts.
The richness and complexity of character development are often just so much more nuanced in the novel's vast space.
And we certainly shouldn't overlook Inspector Javert, described in one source as an admirable villain.
Which really highlights how he embodies that unwavering, almost absolute adherence to the law.
And the profound internal conflict he faces when his strict legal framework clashes with, well, an emerging sense of morality.
Javert's internal struggle is a compelling exploration of duty, justice, and that fascinating capacity for both rigid principle and profound self-awareness. He's definitely not just a one-dimensional bad guy.
No, far from it. So as we bring this deep dive to a close, what have we seen?
We've explored the musical creator's deep respect for Hugo's vision.
Clarify the specific historical context, 1832 June Rebellion, not just the big French Revolution.
And navigated those diverse modern perspectives on the book's relevance, recognizing its place in its literary traditions.
And what becomes so clear is that Les Misérables is truly this multi-layered work, deeply rooted in its time, yet grappling with these incredibly universal themes that continue to spark passionate debate and captivate audiences in all its forms.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. Considering Boublil and Schoenberg's desire to convey a timeless message, and that whole spectrum of modern reactions to Hugo's original novel, what single aspect of Les Misérables do you believe is the most enduring?
Yeah, why do you think it continues to resonate so powerfully with audiences around the world today?
We really encourage you to delve deeper into the source materials we've talked about, and maybe explore the fascinating world of 19th century French history and literature on your own.